Tell everybody what the origin story is of Zumper. Why did you start it?
So Zumper was founded out of pure frustration with apartment renting in my 20s. I grew up in London, moved to New York with BCG, moved to Boston for grad school. I think I moved 7 times in my 20s, and each time I thought search was okay. You can use Craigslist or Zillow or whatever to search for apartments, but I always found that actually when you found something you wanted, you were jettisoned into email ping pong with a property manager or a landlord or a broker. Why was there no e-commerce transaction for apartment rentals? Why is there no book button like there is in Airbnb and short-term rentals for a long-term lease? And so Zumper's founding mission was make renting an apartment as easy as booking a hotel. And that is what we're squarely focused on.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about what Elon did with Teslas, the ability to just go online and order one and to put $500 and put a deposit, like literally the Ford Motor Company is in year like, how old is it? It's 100 what years old. And they still can't let you go online and order a product. I mean, this is why these companies are effed for all eternity, because their whole franchise model is so disgusting and horrific and anti-consumer.
Yep.
But you went are you able to run this in New York and places like that where it's a completely crooked, corrupt system where brokers, and I think this may have changed in the last couple of weeks, but where brokers are basically pitting people against each other, and then they tell you got to put 2 months down, but then at the last minute they say 3 months and they skim the third month and they high pressure tactics?
That is exactly the problem we're fixing. When I moved to New York, I could not believe you're going to spend a third of your income on your rent. Even in New York, you're probably going to spend more than a third of your income on your rent.
Yeah.
Biggest transaction you make every year as a renter. 110 million people in the US rent. They spend a third of their income on their rent. In New York, it's even more. And they're being kind of duped at the final step. That is exactly the transparency we wanted to bring.
Every time.
So in New York, for example, we work directly with landlords when we and we do it 2 ways. We either have kind of full serve or soft serve. Self-serve.
Yeah.
Some landlords want you to go do the photography and stuff. So we can send people in, we can put a lockbox or actually do a tour ourselves. More than happy to do that. Some landlords just want to self-serve. They just want to use our software, a bit like how they used to use Airbnb host software to manage their business, collect their rent. Zumper does that for a landlord. And so we offer landlords the ability to kind of do everything themselves or to get a bit of help to close stuff. But it was all ideally pointed to the renter, where the renter will feel like this is an e-commerce transaction, not just a random piece of paperwork that goes into a pile.
Which city did you start with and why? Because this is a regional play.
Yep.
And each city is uniquely different in terms of their regulation / corruption / how the landlords behave.
So I was in between my 2 years at HBS, I came to San Francisco where I met my co-founder, Taylor. And we started in San Francisco, which is a really, we'll probably get into this, warped real estate city, and the dynamics are bizarre, but the fundamentals...
You can take the words real estate out of that statement, too. It's just a warped city.
We live in remarkable times in San Francisco. Yeah. It is changing very quickly. And real estate here is unique, very strange. 60% of stuff's rent controlled. There's some weird ordinances, but the fundamentals are still here. The landlords need vacancies filled, and they're very worried about like renters and their quality. And so in San Francisco, we actually just tested, would renters in 2012 make offers on apartments on an online board? Would they just publicly make offers, and the landlord could then choose between risk and reward, between kind of how creditworthy they were and what the price was? And we showed overwhelmingly landlords would do that. And so I think that was the fundamentals of this industry will look more like Airbnb in 5 years. That was the MVP. That was
you just said, put it up there and just go ahead and make a bid.
Oh man, it was so ugly as well. It was like just green website, like green back pages. For some reason, we had everything green. I don't know why.
It's the worst color scheme you could ever think of.
Oh, it was so
terrible
bad.
On the web.
Awful. And you said the UI was
What's green on the web? Tell me what's a website that's green on the web?
So one of our competitors was green, was Trulia, but I think they've been
Trulia is a little green.
Trulia is a little green.
Splash of green.
Why is that? So purple's untrustworthy. I'm trying to think. Green. Glassdoor is green. There you go. Glassdoor went heavy on green.
Yeah, it's terrible. Nextdoor has a little green.
Nextdoor has a lot of green.
Yeah. Like if you're doing a website about trail running, go ahead and green, but everything else is blue.
Yeah, we ended up blue and magenta.
Of course.
So we used a really horrible MVP, and I remember at TechCrunch Disrupt we pitched it, and I remember the editors at TechCrunch, just before we were going on stage, we ended up dumbing down what we pitched, because we basically pitched this offer board where it was not an auction at all. We did not want to elevate prices. We just wanted everyone to have full transparency that if someone had been to that apartment the night before and made an offer, you knew what it was. Right. The problem was, to the outside, it could be misconstrued as an auction. And I remember, I think it was Alex here at TechCrunch kind of nearly absolutely vomited on us when we pitched it before we went on stage, because she was like, this is pretty controversial. And it was like actually very good feedback in retrospect, that what we proved was that everyone wanted to be transactional online, but we hadn't quite nailed the mechanism in which people did it.
Yeah, whenever you get into an auction or asking people what they think it's going to be, it just slows things down.
Yep.
And it creates paralysis, doesn't it?
Yep.
Because now you see 4 different prices and you're like, okay, am I overpaying, underpaying?
Yep.
This is why like even TrueCar, which I liked, and I'm friends with Scott Painter, I thought it was a brilliant idea in one way, but it also increases your anxiety. Because you're like, oh my God, there's different prices for cars. Am I paying the right price? And now you're getting into this optimization as opposed to closing.
Yep, that's it. And sometimes with transparency, you can engender the wrong behavior, because if you say to a renter, this is not an auction, but you're showing open prices, of course they're going to think it's an auction and they're going to bid up. And so we ended up doing something that was the very opposite of what we were trying to achieve, but we learned something from it. So then we scrapped that, literally built a search platform for 4 years. So the first 4 years of Zumper had nothing to do with transactional tools. We built what is now the largest private company in our space, will be used by kind of 85 million Americans this year to just search for apartments. And now a subset of our listings are transactional, meaning you can kind of pre-qual and book them. And our job in the next few years is just make a subset of our transactions the majority of our platform.